Hello and welcome to the Utility Week podcast. I'm Rob Horgan, and as ever, I'm joined by James Wallin. For this episode of the podcast, we're also joined by our in-house clean power expert, Tom Grimwood, the reasons for which will become abundantly clear as we dig into the biggest news stories from the past fortnight. Hello both, how are you both?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, not so bad. Tom?
Keeping busy.
Welcome back to the podcast. It's been a few episodes since you last brought your clean power wisdom to the podcast. Obviously, our listeners probably have guessed why you're on the podcast today. It's been a big week for clean power. Should we start with the good news with AR7, the results which came out on Tuesday this week, was it? For everyone listening, we're recording this on Friday the 13th of February.
God, yeah, it is, isn't it? I hadn't realised that. That would explain why it's taken us so long to start this podcast recording. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, we've had a few technical difficulties, but we're here now. But yeah, I think it was it Tuesday morning? I think the final results of the AR7 came out. This week sort of blurred into one a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, I honestly can't remember. Don't hold me to a particular day of this week.
Well, I've got some numbers in front of me. So combining the latest results for solar, onshore and tidal generation with last month's offshore wind results, it means that AR7 is the biggest ever auction round with a total of 14.7 gigawatts procured from 201 projects, which beats the previous record set by AR4 in 2022, which secured 10.8 gigawatts. So it's far surpassed that. So I assume good news, Tom?
It's, particularly following all of the kind of debate over the strike prices for offshore wind. These have come in again below the administrative strike prices and at kind of reasonable amount less than the offshore wind projects. So I think it's kind of, at least if we're having an argument over just the kind of one number of the strike price, these kind of look better on paper. That's not the only consideration. The kind of the power produced by solar farms is going to be less valuable than the stuff that you were getting from the onshore wind and offshore wind farms, because it's more of it in the summer and less of it in the winter when we kind of have the greatest need for it. So it's not as clear cut as that, but when people are having an argument over whether this one number is less than the wholesale price, this kind of improves the argument a bit on that front.
Which is the argument that the government has again tried to put forward, isn't it? As it was very explicitly put with the offshore wind auctions. They compared that to the cost of new gas generation, and they continued banging that drum this time. And when you see those figures side by side, it does look really good, doesn't it? I know that there is some dispute about whether you are actually comparing apples and oranges or whatever the phrase is. But yeah, this is clearly a narrative that the government wants to push, that renewables are the cheapest form of power and that they are eventually going to bring down bills.
Yeah, I mean, any proper comparison is going to be a lot more complex and nuanced and take into to account various different things. But yeah, from their perspective, if it's just putting out the strike price numbers, these at least look better on paper. And
looking at it with that Clean Power 2030 target in mind, this well and truly keeps us on track, right, Tom?
It depends. It depends what numbers you're using and who you ask. I don't have the kind of exact numbers up of kind of how much we've cumulatively procured and built for each technology, but it certainly keeps it within reach, it seems. How much more there's left to be procured in the remaining auctions is depends on which end of the range that you're picking from the government's targets and whether you still think those are the correct numbers to be aiming for.
But in terms of what we've done, lots of speculation leading up to this auction rounds. We when we ask people, what do we need to achieve this time around to keep us on track for clean power, I think in most cases we've hit or exceeded those targets that people were talking about, right? Across all of the technology, certainly across solar. I think even the Solar UK predictions that came out a few days before the actual results, which were heralding it as going to be a record auction, even those sort of top end of their estimates, it went slightly above that. So it's a real success, certainly for solar.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about capacity, certainly for offshore wind and solar, we've kind of come in at the top end of what people were expecting. I'm a little bit less sure about onshore wind.
Yeah, onshore wind, I'd like to have some more conversations with people really to understand about that. I mean, certainly one of the things that immediately jumped out to me was the fact that most of this was in Scotland.
Yes.
And obviously there's been a lot of talk about onshore wind in England and this de facto ban.
Although the ban was lifted a couple of years ago, it's going to take a while for new projects to filter through, and so we're only just seeing the green shoots of that now. I was speaking to Aurora yesterday, and they were saying that's probably going to be the same for the next auction for AR8, and it's probably not until AR9 that we're going to really start seeing any decent volumes of onshore wind farms in England coming through.
Interesting. So the other side of the clean power coin that we've been covering for months and months and has moved on quite a bit in the last fortnight is obviously connections. Goes hand in hand with the projects we've just talked about there. Do you want to just run us up to speed, Tom, on the last few announcements?
Yeah, there's been several quite important announcements over the last few weeks. Most recently, Ofgem releasing its response to a request that was submitted by the National Energy System Operator and the 3 transmission owners back in October, where they'd basically asked to be relieved from their regulatory obligations in relation to what's referred to as the protected projects under the reformed connections process. To get a Gate 2 offer, you've got to meet a criteria for readiness and a criteria for strategic alignment with the government's Clean Power 2030 action plan. And for most projects that go through, in the case of the latter, that will mean that they will fall under the permitted capacities for their technology in the case of onshore wind, solar and batteries that are set out in the Clean Power Action Plan. But you could also fulfil that requirement by coming under a series of protection clauses. And the first 2 of those provide protections for projects that or were due to be connected over this year, 2026, or they're significantly progressed. And in the case of the latter, if they had a connection date before the end of 2027, they also received protection for their connection date. So there's a bunch of projects who were due to be connected in 2026 and 2027, and under the connections reform, those dates were meant to be protected. But the NESO and the TOs sent a request to Ofgem in October, basically saying that they didn't think they were going to be able to meet those connection dates for a bunch of those projects, and could they get relief from their regulatory obligations to uphold those dates. Ofgem said they were kind of first told about this in June. They received the request in October, but they've only now been able to respond because they were waiting on a list of the affected projects that they'd asked for from the TOs and NESO. And Ofgem said they received those at the kind of end of January, I think maybe the 26th. And now it's issued its response. As part of that request, they were not only asking for relief from their obligations, but also to be able to straight away issue a Gate 2 offer with the revised connection date they think is actually achievable, rather than sticking to the process and sending out an offer with an unrealistic date and then going back and changing it. I mean, Ofgem agreed that it would be silly to do that would be wasting everyone's time, but it's denied their request for relief from their obligations on the basis